climactic element of Clark Kent versus LexCorp's PR department is Superman is in a battle with Lex Luthor, and Lex Luthor identifies as Superman's nemesis, and Superman just goes, "What? No, my nemesis is Jenny from PR."
Like, after this, I have to send Jenny from PR emails.
Like, oh yeah, sure, you've dug up some kryptonite and you're throwing it at me. Whatever, that's Tuesday. Do you have any idea how many phone calls from Jenny I've had? And now Jenny from PR, who has no idea that the annoying journalist she's been dealing with all month is actually Superman, has her boss breathing down her neck, asking her weird questions about her relationship with Superman.
And she's like, "What? What? This was Tuesday. Where did Superman come from?"
I was just stonewalling this investigative journalist who was trying to find out where all of your kryptonite was coming from, boss man. I'm sorry, I thought that was my entire job, to stop people finding out that you're, a serial killer. But to be fair, I think people do know. I'm not sure how good LexCorp's PR is.
I mean, I've only heard bad things about them.
In universe, I think it does vary canon to canon. But, in the DCEU, he's in prison for, blowing up Congress.
And there's not a lot of PR you can really do to fix that. People are going to remember.
I mean, to be fair, actually, once I said it out loud, I was like, I think you could. I did remember that we live in a world where there was actually a Capitol insurrection and they're all fine.
Well, quite a lot of them are in jail now.
Quite a lot of them are in jail, but not the rich or notable ones.
Yeah.
The ones who are wealthy, successful politicians with a background of shady business dealings are fine.
It's true. Material reality of power continues to be the material reality of power.
It does.
Anyway, shall we talk about a theme park that you could get away with burning down?
I absolutely want to talk about a theme park and possibly burn it down.
No, I do think that we should consider doing a bonus episode that is just us talking about how we could do this so much better.
I really want to do that so much. Can we do that?
Let's do that. And in the same way as it was very important for us to do a bonus episode that was just us screaming about Lightlark because it helped us stay on track for the actual analysis, I think in the same way it's a necessary pressure valve that we will talk about all the ways that we can do Evermore better.
Just as soon as one of us gets off topic, the other can just be like, bonus episode,
exactly.
bonus episode.
Exactly. We are doing an analysis. Later on, we are going to do the pitch for why we should be allowed to run Evermore.
And it's a slightly more positive bonus episode. I do think we need to do a bonus episode about something we actually like at some point.
We do need to do one that isn't just snark, and it's just we need to tell you how delightful this is.
I'm scared we are slowly turning ourselves into angry YouTube reviewers, completely by accident.
Yeah, no. We have to. We've been positive about quite a lot of things, to be fair.
Yeah, just in our bonus content where we're not doing any kind of analysis. So far, it's been exclusively stuff that we rage.
Fair, that's fair. We'll have to keep an eye out for things that we could just talk about for 3 hours because we love them.
I still want to do a bonus episode where we come up with a script for Art House Shazam.
I could be persuaded.
I can picture it in my mind now.
Particularly, I can be persuaded because this is mostly a bonus episode where you tell me about Art House Shazam and I say, yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, I'm just going to tell you a story.
Right,
okay, picture it now. Moody grey sky, thunderstorms, city skyline.
All right, you've persuaded me. We will do the Art House Shazam bonus episode.
Terrific. Okay, so welcome to Analysis Roulette. I've done my part for the day.
Welcome, listener, to Analysis Roulette. We are not yet doing the Art House Shazam episode. We are doing Evermore Park, which I'm excited about also. My name is Duck. I use he, they pronouns.
My name is Dia. I use they, them pronouns.
And neither of us have ever been to Evermore Park. But it is a fascinating
I'm pretty sure neither of us have ever been within, screaming distance of Evermore Park.
I don't think I've been to Utah, but I don't think I know where Utah is.
It's one of the square ones.
I'm now pulling up a map
right?
of the United States to try and identify where Utah is. Oh, I have never been anywhere near Utah. No. The closest I've been to Utah, I think, is Charlotte in North Carolina, which is 1,000 miles away from Utah.
Yeah, I have only been to 2 places in the States, and they are Albuquerque and Chicago, which I think are both a million miles away from Utah in pretty much opposite directions.
Yeah, I don't think those places are close to Utah. So not only have we not been to Evermore, we have not been like on the same continental shelf as Utah.
Yeah, everything I know about
we have
Utah
not
comes
been there.
from Book of Mormon, the musical.
That's a limited scope.
I'm told it's very accurate.
I can't claim to know more. It's just that my source was a book about the Donner Party. So really
Oh
focused on the
yeah.
deserts.
Oh yeah, there's that stuff as well. I do actually know quite a bit about, like, Murder, Utah. In my head, the versions of American cities that exist in, like, true crime and, like, historical horror narratives aren't the same places as the ones where actual human people live today.
That makes sense. You're wrong, but I understand why your brain would go there.
Like, there are 2 Californias. One of them is, like, Disney Channel California, and one of them is, like, Golden State Killer California.
I think that one's accurate. I think there may actually be 2 Californias.
I think that's true of all US states if you aren't in them.
I mean, there's at least 4 New Yorks.
Oh, there are, like, a dozen New Yorks stacked on top of each other
Right,
like
it's like London
pancakes.
that way. Which one you're in doesn't solely depend on your geography.
The difference in London, it's made more complicated because you do occasionally have a building site that breaks through into a literal underneath London,
Well,
as
yes,
opposed
but
to
there's
the
just
metaphysical underneath London.
right. There's just the actual. We dug and we discovered Romans.
If New York is a stack of pancakes, London is like a stack of waffles.
Sometimes you dig down and find a hole. Yeah,
Yeah,
and sometimes there are Romans in it.
I really want those crunchy sugar waffles now.
Why would you say this to me when I don't have any?
I'm gonna have to go to the corner shop and get some. This is unbearable. Okay, meet back here in an hour.
No, we have to talk about Evermore.
I do legit want waffles, damn it. Okay, no. Evermore. Let's talk about it.
Evermore. So Evermore describes itself as a fantasy adventure theme park. It's in Utah. It's been running for 5.5 years. It is a fascinating phenomenon, and I don't say that sarcastically. I can genuinely spend hours like poking at Evermore to see what it is.
Oh, absolutely. You did not assign me any homework for this week, so
I didn't
I
need to.
did at one point over the weekend just, like, have a quick read around, like, some social media clicking, some YouTube travelogues that I watched
Yeah.
at, like, 3 times speed. And it is strangely hypnotic to watch this whole thing come together.
Right. I mean, I think I should put out there up front that if Evermore was instead of being in Utah, was in Manchester, I would go all the
I
time.
would absolutely go. Are you kidding me? I would be so
I
there.
I am vulnerable to the charms of Evermore. Fortunately, possibly for me having other hobbies, it's not nearby.
The fact that it's trash in the kind of ways that it's trash makes it genuine catnip as, like, a weird local attraction.
Yes, it's compelling in certain ways, which hopefully we will manage to communicate. But what we're trying to do eventually is a feminist analysis. But first, I will just summarize. So, if I talk about Evermore, do you then briefly want to talk about the concept of feminism?
Oh, briefly,
And
yeah.
I do say briefly. Like, can you give me the one paragraph summary of feminist analysis?
Sure, why not? Do you want to do Evermore first?
I'll do Evermore first, so that I'm not just talking for an hour without a single break in my dulcet tones for the listener.
Sounds
So
good.
Evermore Park is like one person's baby. That person is Ken Bretschneider, who has a lot of money from internet stuff. He's one of the internet millionaires.
He's the padlock
Um,
man, I believe.
he does he is the founder of DigiCert, which is a provider of places of certificates that make the websites have the little padlock that says that you are not being phished and you are actually on the real Wikipedia.
Yes. The little padlock man.
He is the provider of the little padlock to the internet. It turns out there's a lot of money in selling little padlocks to the internet. Enough money that you can buy a bit of land in Utah and say, I enjoy decorating my house for Halloween. Do a whole theme park. We're not going to have rides. It's not that kind of theme park.
I think they did originally intend rides.
They originally claimed to intend a ride, but the ride they claimed to intend was so implausible, I'm not sure I believe them.
Yeah, they made some absolutely fascinating opening
They
claims.
did when they originally pitched it because it was like pitched at a Comic Con, and the things they were
In
claiming.
Salt Lake City, I want to say.
Yes, according to Wikipedia, quoting our sources, the concept for Evermore Park was debuted at Salt Lake Comic Con in 2014 with the panel.
I hate that I knew that offhand. I hate myself.
Yeah, it was announced to be open in 2015, was actually opened in 2018. This is the sort of thing that will happen if you say I'm opening a theme park next year.
Yeah.
It is especially the sort of thing that will happen if you say I'm opening a theme park next year and we're going to have an immersive pirate boat ghost ride where you get on a boat and then later on you get off the boat and explore the ship and then you get back on the boat. There are so many logistical ways that simply does not work. That was never going to happen.
Aside from the 8 million other things you'd have to do, how on earth do you get planning permission for that through in a year?
Right.
I mean, I don't claim to be knowledgeable about Utah planning permission, but, like, I assume you have to get permission for every stage in that process?
I assume there must be some planning permission. And you can think of ways to make a ghost ship that you see from the ride and then later on go and explore. That would work fine. Like you can have a walk around ghost ship that is also visible from the boat's ride. No problem. But the pitch of we're going to take you on a boat to the boat and then you're going to get off the ride and explore and get back on the ride. Unless you are going to run that ride once every 30 minutes, it's not possible. It's and it's sort of trivially not possible. I can see that it logistically doesn't work, having thought about this for 2 minutes. But that was the pitch, and apparently people were very excited by this.
If somebody with enough charisma and money tells you they can do something impossible, a part of you is like, "Damn, maybe they can. Maybe the reason I can't do that is just money." And then you watch them fail, quite reassuring about the state of the universe. You go, "Oh, no, these guys have just never been told no in their lives."
Right, put a pin in that. It's going to be relevant to our analysis.
I got a pin.
It's a shiny gold one.
I love it when I get to tee you up.
I also think very relevant is, according to Wikipedia again, apparently several contractors did not get paid on time or in full and had to sue them about it, which, again, is what happens when you've never been told no and don't know how to budget.
It's like if you I don't recommend you do this, but if you read any of Donald Trump's, like, pre-presidential,
All
like,
of his advice is just stiff your
ghostwritten stuff in
contractors.
interviews, all of his advice is either A, have money, or B, don't pay people. And I'm like, I mean, quite aside from how well that works if you aren't already, like, a millionaire, those
I don't
two
think it works
shouldn't
so
go
well for us.
together. I'd understand one or the other. I wouldn't agree, but I'd understand. But you can afford to pay people.
You just aren't. Yeah.
You just aren't.
To be fair, I think Evermore Park probably is a loss-making enterprise.
You shock me.
Right. Because what actually opened is a small-ish. I mean, you can see the edge of it from every part of it, which makes it a smallish area of land with some landscaping and 5 or 6 interesting semi-historical looking buildings, 3 or 4 of which have insides, and a small train ride.
I do love that they prioritized the train.
I appreciate the train. I sort of wish it had been a miniature train because I do love a miniature train. I don't know if those are a thing in America.
I don't think they have model villages, which I really question what they do with their children on Saturdays during the summer
It doesn't even
holidays.
have to be a model village. There were a couple. It was a park when I was a kid. Had a model train.
Oh, we had a great model village. I miss that every day.
It's the local Lido. It had a dangerously steep, very high slide, and also a miniature railway. Anyway,
Yeah.
we welcome to Britain, where we are still in the 1960s in terms of our parks and attractions.
Yeah. Have you ever tried to explain a model village to, like, someone who's never seen one, and they're just like, "Oh, that sounds like a nice thing to walk past," and you're like, "No, no, no, you're there for hours."
You have to memorize the layout of that thing. There will be a quiz.
Like, you can describe it to American and they'll be like, "Oh, that sounds kinda cute. Like, I would definitely go and look at that as I walked through the park," and I'm like, "No, that is the park."
It's the whole park. It is the theme park. It's a mini village.
People
You
people,
walk
like,
around it.
go there for an entire day.
They go there regularly, which is even weirder.
Yeah, I mean, if you live near one, you are going there every other week during the school holidays. Minimum.
No one, the science has yet to determine why.
There's just the allure.
There is something about being the same height as the church steeple.
It's magic.
Anyway,
God. Okay, yes, Evermore Park exists now.
Evermore Park exists now. It's a place. It doesn't have rides that you would imagine from a theme park. I mean, it has this train, like a flat level, goes at train speed, so you can look at the buildings from the other side. Train. It's not a ride in that sense. And it has, at various points, a couple of like walk around attractions, like a spooky haunted house place that you can walk through and look at. But mostly, it's a set for some actors who have been given some instructions, not necessarily enough.
Necessarily good.
And what you are supposed to do as a visitor to the park is roleplay with the actors and do little quests and join one of the guilds by being sent on little quests to sort of earn your entry into a guild. And then there's axe throwing and archery and an area of retail stalls selling the sorts of things that you would find at Renaissance fairs. And that's sort of it. That's sort of the whole thing.
This is the thing, is on the face of it, this sounds so fun as something to do with like a random Saturday where I had nothing else to do and 20 quid in my pocket.
Right. It does seem like the ticket prices are fairly low compared to a theme park that has rides. You know, you're not paying Disneyland prices for this.
That's the thing, is this is the thing, is like, yeah, the initial pitch clearly off the charts, like never gonna happen. When you hear about the thing that the park actually is, you're like, oh, that could be a fun way to spend a weekend in Utah.
Right. As I say, if this was close to me, I would go.
Yeah, I've never been to anything like that. I would do it to see what it's like, give it a crack.
Right.
However,
And it does, and you know, I am a fan of nice landscaped areas to walk around, which does help.
I like nice landscaped areas. I've been to a couple of like pretty good like audience participation type theatrical situations and enjoyed them very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Burnt City is currently wrapping up as we record its period in London. Loved it. Great time. There's no reason this can't work.
No, absolutely. Like walk around a couple of hours, taking a nice stroll around a nicely landscaped park and looking at things along the way, only instead of information boards, it's, oh, we found the archery and, ooh, a spooky chapel and we found the refreshments, but it's like old-timey. That's all good and fun. That could be a nice afternoon. Unfortunately, it seems like Evermore never really has lived up to the vision of its creator in terms of breadth and depth and impressiveness. It's sort of perpetually unfinished at this point. It keeps having maybe closure scares. It sued Taylor Swift at one point, which was probably not a great financial decision. She countersued, both parties settled, still probably cost them some money to do that.
If you've heard of Evermore Park and you are not a fan of theme parks or like a Utah resident, you've heard of it either because of the Jenny Nicholson video or the Taylor Swift legal case. Those are the two things.
Those are the sources of the thing. It had another "is it going to close" scare this autumn. It seems like they are planning to reopen. They've reset the internal story at least once. So the actors that you're interacting with, there is an overarching story where a plot is happening. You've got characters who are pursuing large-scale goals, other characters who are trying to stop them. People take over the town sometimes. You know, there is a plot happening. But they have reset the story at least once, which suggests to me that they sort of wrote themselves into a corner.
Yeah, it is a continuous plot. So while the setting
Yeah.
changes time and place and like the actors get new roles and things like that, there is like an ongoing plot at any time you visit. And any time you visit could be any stage in that plot, ranging from like set building early stages to climactic battles. And you don't really get a vote.
Yes. It seems pretty random as to whether you big day or a small day. Their calendar does not, I suspect, is not actually planned in advance as far as which is going to be the big day. They're just kind of going to do it when everything comes together. They'll have a big day.
Yeah, and I'm under the impression that the actors are pretty free range.
That is the impression I get, is that they are pretty lightly briefed on what the overarching plot is, and underneath that, they have a lot of freedom to make stuff up.
Yeah, I used to be a tour guide in a museum, and I remember at Halloween, we got a briefing in the morning, which was, feel free to add some spooky fun stuff to your tours. And my tours were of a museum of optical illusions. And I
Spooky.
remember to this day sitting in that meeting thinking, what do you want me to? I am good on spooky trivia. I don't know how to relate it to the operation of an antique. I feel like that is kind of what the morning briefings at Evermore Park are like. I just like a guy stands in front of me and goes, I really believe that you guys can make this a special day, so go out there and do your best. And you're just sat there going, wait, were there instructions at the beginning that I slept through, or was that it? Did you die? Did you die?
My stupid router.
Oh, you're alive.
I could hear you say, "Did you die?" And I was saying, "No, I'm here. I'm alive. I'm talking." And it clearly wasn't going through.
You became a ghost.
I became a ghost. It was spooky. I was not properly briefed.
Okay.
But yes, so as we were saying about the briefing, this probably explains why visitors seem to have a very inconsistent experience. And I don't think it's solely do you throw yourself into the roleplay aspects. I think it also is going to very much depend what day you go on, whether anything interesting is happening, which actors you interact with, whether they are good at giving you a memorable or interesting experience, what quests they throw out at you, because they seem to have very free reign on throwing out quests, but very little logistical support on them.
I think also how good you as a guest are at LARPing.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
based on the travelogues I looked at, I think I would have a horrible time at Evermore Park, and I think you would merely have a disappointing time.
Right. Like, you seem to have a bad experience if you, for instance, having been told that this is a place where you come and interact with the actors and they give you quests. If you go up to an actor and say, "Do you have a quest for me?" they role play at you as if they've never heard of such a thing, because it wouldn't be
Yeah.
immersive to just
And
say, "Yes, I have a quest for you." But that means you have to know that to invent a code word for it.
yeah, and like
And say, I am a world walker from beyond the portal and I seek to join your guild, and then they'll give you a quest.
I don't think like the average person rocking up to this park has done that much research.
Probably not, and I don't think they should have to, from a attraction design perspective.
It reminds me really strongly of when I was in like year 6, I went to actually I think it was a little bit later, whatever. When I was quite young, I went to a like immersive Doctor Who exhibition where like they had real props on display and stuff, but also the staff were like actors in costume. And I have this
Hmm.
extremely strong memory of asking like a question about like the Dalek prop thing, like the actual casing of it.
Yeah.
And the woman goes like, "Oh yes, that was left behind after the like invasion of London in 2007." And I'm still like, "No, no, it was made at BBC Studios up the road. Please answer my questions." And I couldn't work out cheat code to get real world answers, and I was just
Right.
unbelievably frustrated with this situation.
Right. I think there's a lot of that happening with visitors, where some of the actors will probably hold your hand a bit more of getting you into the game, and some of them will be quite hardcore. I am going to stay strictly in character, which means you cannot actually get me to give you anything to do.
Yeah, I think if I was at Evermore, I would end up just like sitting on a bit of open grass and or wiring somewhere, watching the day go by.
We should probably mention the wiring as well. Evermore Park does not
Yeah,
appear to have good safety practices.
anything.
Um,
You could have ended that sentence at safety.
it doesn't seem to have good safety. Doesn't seem to be very safe. There's some poorly supervised pyrotechnics being handled badly. There's things like let's turn off all the lights and chase everyone out screaming, which was probably very dramatic and memorable, but is not a super safe way to run a theme park
Especially in America.
where that sort of thing is more likely to be an actual deadly attack than a game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, not something I would do, but again, we can talk about that in the bonus episode.
Bonus
As to
episode.
how and why we would do things differently.
Keep on track.
Um,
We can do it.
We can stay on track. We can do it. So that is Evermore Park. It is only open at the moment 2 days a week in the evenings. It's open Friday and Saturday evenings. That is possibly not coincidentally about the same number of hours that you would spend if you were a regular attender at a UK club LARP.
Yeah.
And the ways in which this thing is a LARP with a park attached are a lot of the problem.
It seems to me like a LARP with a dedicated restaurant more than a park.
Oh, they've closed the restaurant.
They have closed the restaurant. What? And all the rubbish huts, or just the restaurant?
Just the restaurant. I think there is still a couple of like
You can get
hot
a hot
chocolate and
dog.
sweet shops.
It's a LARP that has like booked one of those drive-up vans.
It's a LARP with a kiosk.
Yes, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. It has, in fact, or it appears to have, from what I could see on sort of recent filming, fewer food options than the LARPs I go to, which is,
That's just sad.
it is a little bit sad.
I know from you and other LARP friends that British LARP has high standards, but this is a theme park.
Right. I would hope that the theme park would have better standards because we are literally in a field.
It's run by a millionaire.
Right. But he doesn't appear to be making a profit off it. And I think the way it is designed probably precludes making a profit off it.
I don't really understand how you could, yeah.
But that's sort of okay for him because he's a millionaire and this is a passion project. This is something he's doing for fun. It's not really a business in the normal sense.
You can pour money into stuff all you want when you have unlimited amounts of money.
Right. So, having sketched out what Evermore is, could you even more briefly sketch out the concept of feminist analysis of literature?
Okay, nobody is allowed to email me about what things I didn't say, because I am cutting out a lot. If we accept feminism in like a really basic level as the idea of a socio-political movement aiming for equality of sexes, with vague interpretations of what equality of sexes means, feminist theory is the extension of that into forming analysis of media, discourse, culture as it exists in the world around us. That can take a lot of different forms. It can be looking at, on a really basic level, does this media in and of itself represent a world with parity between the sexes? Does it represent a world without division between the sexes? Or it can be about a sort of more abstract idea of like, what does gender mean in this text we're looking at? It can also be, in a very basic way, how does this text treat the real life human people in it in terms of how they relate to sex and gender? Is that covering it? I feel like I can stop there. If you want a fun time, I really recommend going on the Wikipedia page for feminist theory and having a look at the list of all of the concepts that are included under it. It's sort of depressing, but also very fun.
Yeah. So feminism is a big topic. We are not going to cover all of it, and I'm not really going to try to synthesize all of the various schools of feminist analysis into a single one for the purpose of this. I'm just going to generally... You know how when I did Hamlet, I was like, what if what is going on here is gay stuff?
Mm.
I'm similarly taking an approach of what if what is going on here is sex and gender and patriarchy stuff. And if we think about this with those things in mind, what do we come up with?
I also think, even just having listened to what we've said so far on this episode alone, people can form their own opinions about what schools of feminism we're probably not super into.
Right. There have been subtle clues, if you were listening to them, as
For example,
to our positions
the
on certain
introductions.
radical feminist points. Anyway, moving on.
As we were.
Okay, so I want to talk about Evermore as a physical park, and I want to talk about Evermore as a game, and then I want to pick up on the similarity, the places where those overlap and what that can tell us. So, starting off with the physical park, we mentioned safety briefly. There is actually a lot to say here.
Yeah.
A lot of this does come off Jenny Nicholson's video because I did watch some other stuff and look at some fandom stuff around sort of people attending the park and the gameplay, but sort of the detailed safety stuff that's mostly my source for it. But we've got live wires, or at least unhidden wires hanging around. We've got areas that are not fenced off that really should be, because you could easily walk into them and break your ankle, if not electrocute yourself.
Yeah.
It's probably good that the train moves very slowly, because the level crossing appears to be entirely manual.
It also doesn't seem to have a lot of just like safely flattened terrain. I understand that I'm British. I think there's going to be more rain than there probably is in Utah, but I'm looking at a lot of the travelogues just going a small shower and like you're not going to get a person with a cane through that field.
Yeah, I think a lot of the paths to me look like they could wash out. Maybe we're overestimating how much rain there is, but they look like they would. It doesn't look like drainage has been carefully considered. Only some of the paths are finished. Some of them are gravel. They have, at least one case, had a staff member set themselves on fire through badly managed pyrotechnics.
She actually said in that interview, which I did go and listen to, actually not for this podcast, just in my own time, that it happened at least twice to her alone.
Right, because they were letting her wander around with a handheld pyrotechnic and the fuel for it just shoved in her pockets.
You do see other characters in quite a lot of the fan footage and official footage of like important dialogue throwing these fireballs around. So, assuming that that actress is not uniquely negligent, this presumably has to have happened to other people.
Right. And they're interacting directly with guests with pyrotechnics in their pockets, in their hands, throwing the fireballs around.
And this includes like guests with limited mobility, guests who are small children, guests who are wearing very flammable costumes, because you are encouraged to come in costume.
You are encouraged to come in costume, and the cheap kind of costume for anything like this is pure polyester.
Also, again, this is a half-constructed building they're usually in front of with exposed wires on it.
Right. There are a lot of places where you've got semi-built areas that are not very thoroughly blocked off. And in general, you've got a lack of supervision around the park. I watched a walkthrough of their most recent winter event, which was a sort of Christmas Carol-themed brief walkthrough thing with a couple of scenes going on. And just in the course of that walkthrough, there were children playing totally unsupervised around a totally unscreened open fire pit. Like you could go for a walkthrough and there's this teenager kind of seeing how close he can come to sticking his trainer in the flames.
Yeah, there's a lot of, if you just watch people walking around the park in travelogues, there's a lot of spots where just sort of in the background behind them, there's what appears to be like an open trench, or just like a sort of bed of plants with a little rim that just looks like something you would trip into and break a leg.
Yeah. Same walkthrough. There was there's a dry fountain with a cool statue in it. Not in itself a problem. A dry fountain is not inherently a risk. A dry fountain with what was either unattended dry ice or an unattended smoke machine in it.
Both great.
Pretty bad. That's just not good. You shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And kind of everyone knows you shouldn't do that, but somehow Evermore is doing this sort of thing routinely.
I will say from the videos I watched, it does seem like they actually have a mostly like late teen, early 20s clientele upwards. A lot of this I would not want a child near. Like a lot of it is stuff that is sort of fine if you assume that everyone in the area is like a sober adult who is at the very least, if not able-bodied, then like able-bodied enough to get themselves up if they have fallen.
But
if you are in a wheelchair, very, very drunk, or under the age of 10, there are a lot of hazards for you visible in every single Evermore travelogue I watched that wasn't from like a big professional setup like Evermore themselves or BuzzFeed or whatever.
Yeah. And genuinely, their train has a level crossing where it crosses a walking path. It has a couple of striped poles that appear to be completely manual to raise and lower. There's nothing. They don't lower. Like you can just raise it and walk past because you decided you want to. So it's probably good that the train goes about 2 miles an hour and therefore has time to stop if there's a person on the tracks.
Yeah.
Because if it went train speeds, that would be unfathomably dangerous. I've not heard of anyone being seriously injured at Evermore, although I am aware of at least one cast member who has set themselves on fire.
And there was one who like broke both legs whilst performing as the big fawn dude, I think.
Oh, up on stilts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
And
that'll happen.
I went back and watched some footage of him before the fall, and he does appear to be, like, properly strapped in to the stilts.
Yeah. It's that's not good, is it? So there's not a lot of safety precautions at the park. As a visitor, this is all part of the same kind of thing I'm wanting to think about. It's this kind of places where there's a vision for this physical park, but the actual implementation is missing all of the parts that weren't in the vision. So the safety stuff just isn't really there. Information for
Yeah.
guests is not really there. There's nothing that tells you how to play this game. There's also no information on what food might be available. There's no information on what parking is like. There's actually very limited information on whether they're open on a given day, and if so, what parts of the park or what parts of the experience are available.
Again, I return to this is all, like, quite fun and charming if it's a little local attraction and you're
Hmm.
not particularly worried about, like, your own safety. Can you imagine if you or I flew to Utah?
Or even just, can you imagine taking a coach load of kids for a school field trip and the whole
Yeah,
park turns out not to be open?
it's you
Like,
can't operate
you
a
just
business like this.
can't do this. The food situation appears to be dire. Like, at its best, it seems that there was one sit-down restaurant that was never properly staffed, did not reliably have all the things available on its menu, just wasn't really rated as a restaurant, and a couple of kiosks doing like coffee and donuts and hot dog.
Yeah.
And that's at its best. That's on a good day when everything is running. Those are your options. And it seems like those are not always available. And now they've sold the restaurant to use separately as an events venue, because they're making a loss. So they've had to sell the restaurant because it's outside of the park proper. So now it is literally a coffee and donuts stand. I think that's what they had as their food option for their winter opening, was a coffee and donuts place. It's not good.
Like, the ice rink at the Natural History Museum managed to have a, like, seasonal hot chocolate stand, and the Natural
Right.
History Museum has the worst food in Britain.
I want to agree. It's just that most of the times I've been to the Natural History Museum, I have eaten slightly squashed peanut butter sandwiches and bruised apples from the rucksack. So yes, it's terrible.
I have on 2 separate occasions eaten the food actually provided by the Natural History Museum, and both times I've been genuinely shocked by how bad it is.
I shall bear this in mind
And, like,
next time
I
I
did
go to the
not have
Natural History
high
Museum.
expectations. The thing is, what you're paying for is to sit near the dinosaur animatronics and eat lunch there.
Right, and I mean, I will go to the Natural History Museum again because I want to see the dinosaurs again, but I want the museum cafe to at least be okay.
They have more dinosaurs, like, 2 more animatronics in their little dinosaur-themed restaurant, and I'm like, I'm actually willing to pay an upcharge on food to sit near some animatronic
But I
dinosaurs.
still want a normal museum quality piece of carrot cake for my trouble.
I told a staff member I had an allergy, and not only could she not tell me any of the food that I would be allergic to, which is, like, fine, it happens, go ask the chef, it's cool. But they brought me out what was clearly a specially fired meal that had 0 seasoning on it, just nothing, no
Ooh,
salt, nada.
ooh,
Just
not
like an
good.
unseasoned risotto.
That's that's not a meal that can get away with that.
Oh. The Natural History Museum food is like what people who make jokes about beans on toast on Twitter think British food is.
But you are asserting it seems to be better than Evermore.
It does seem to be better than Evermore, because they at least managed to add a seasonal kiosk when they actually no longer do, but historically when they have done
Yeah,
their ice skating
and to be
rink.
and to be fair, it is reliably available as a cafe in the Natural History
Yeah,
Museum,
there
which
is a
Evermore
cafe,
does not.
there is a themed restaurant, and there is a seasonal pop-up kiosk. This is the bare minimum.
Right. Similarly, toilets appear to be bare minimum. It appears like there is one toilet block. It's near the front gate.
Yeah.
There is no secondary toilet block near where most of the actual roleplay is happening. There is no backup option. Now, this makes sense because I suspect this is just because all of the services come as far as the front gate and only further if necessary. But this is probably just because the plumbing and sewage, it's cheaper to run it to the front gate and have your toilet block there than it is to additionally run it further back into the park. That is almost certainly why that is true. But it's not a good provision.
Yeah. I didn't find anyone talking about the, accessibility of the toilets or, like, baby changing facilities, but my expectations are on the floor.
I don't expect it to be particularly good because nothing at Evermore has been done above a fairly bare minimum. I'm not even going to qualify that. Nothing at Evermore has been done above a fairly bare minimum. The buildings aren't built. The ones that are built don't always have insides. The food is minimal and not always available. There is no information on anything. Safety practices are very poor. Safety practices are probably very poor for the same reason that sometimes the roleplay is poor, because people are just turned loose and allowed to do whatever. So someone has the bright idea of, oh, let's put a smoke machine in the fountain, it'll be cool and spooky. And no one ever says, you can't leave a smoke machine by itself for 4 hours. Don't do that. Don't light the fire pit and walk away and leave it alone.
I have the impression that whoever is organising the park on a day-to-day basis suffers from chronic, surely people will be sensible-itis.
Yes, that's probable.
Whereas, like, my experience of, like, museum work, events work, stuff like that, is that you have to at all times assume that at least one member of your, like, paying public is the Joker.
Yes. Yes, I mean, from a safety design perspective, you have to assume that at all times within your park, you have an old lady with osteoporosis, an unsupervised 3-year-old, a haemophiliac, and a high-risk pregnancy.
And the Joker.
And the Joker. These people are in your park, and when you plan things like evacuation routes or people being able to fix their blood sugar or not falling down holes, you have to assume that the person who falls down the hole is one of those people. The person trying to go down the steps in the rain is using a walker. Can they still go down your steps?
You just cannot say, like, well, surely people will not go into the barely constructed buildings, like, with obvious broken pieces.
Because
they will, and they will film it on YouTube, and they will call it, like, you know, spooky abandoned building challenge, and encourage other people to do the same thing a week later.
They will, and even more so when you have a point on your map that is labelled as Celtic ruins. If you are advertising that you have ruins and something appears to be in bad physical shape, people will assume it's the ruins and not the construction site.
And that you have built it to look ruined.
Right, that you've built it carefully and safely to look like it's ruined, as opposed to it's just falling apart.
People coming to your park will assume that you are actively trying to not kill them.
That is an assumption people make in so many situations, and you should try to live so that they are justified. This has been philosophy with Duck.
If they are paying you for the privilege.
Right. You should try not to kill your customers.
Capitalism with deer.
You should try not to kill your customers is the synthesis of these principles.
There are multiple reasons not to kill your customers.
Repeat custom is only one of them, but it is a big one. So that's the physical side of like Evermore as a park. And in terms of, and I hope I've laid out fairly clearly sort of, that's sort of all the points that are not the aesthetic vision. Anything that you would think of as sort of behind the scenes or backstage is neglected. Anything that is the sort of ordinary mundane realities of life, like people need to eat and toilet and get out of the rain.
And not be immolated.
Are all neglected. They're just not given a lot of thought or a lot of care. So, second part of this thinking is Evermore as a game. Now, I'm going to make an assertion here that I may need to unpack for you. I am going to assert that Evermore is a bi-weekly club LARP.
I hear you.
I have been a regular at 2 different bi-weekly club LARPs. They both had one evening a week that was the tavern night, and one afternoon on a weekend that was the adventuring time. And we had a total of 8 to 10 hours gameplay a week. That is what you will get if you go to Evermore every time it's open. But all you will get is the tavern nights. All you will get is the standing around role-playing with NPCs and other players. You won't get any of the adventuring as far as I can tell. Club LARP in the UK has been going pretty much exactly 40 years. It's generally agreed to have begun in 1982 with Treasure Trap, which gave birth to offshoots in the form of Durham University Treasure Trap and then Cambridge University Treasure Trap. And by that point, other universities around the country had been sort of getting in on the scene of making their own settings and sets of rules. Like the difference between a Treasure Trap game and something else was they had a setting and they had a particular rule set, and if you made up different ones, you were playing something else. Like there was a York one, there was an Aberystwyth one. They were not Treasure Trap, they were other games. Birmingham's got one. Manchester's had one at various points. It's extremely common that for a university in the UK to have a bi-weekly LARP. You get about the same amount of gameplay, and frankly about the same costume standards that you get at Evermore. But you also get a design philosophy that says the players should be able to make a lot of meaningful decisions and drive the outcomes, which you don't really get at Evermore. In LARP terms, Evermore, I would describe the Evermore game as it is setting light. There's not a lot of detail in what the setting is or what you can bring into it as a player.
Yeah.
Basically freeform in terms of rules. There don't appear to be any mechanical, what can you do in this game to represent your magic or your sword fighting skills or your scouting skills. Anything like that does not appear to be in Evermore. It's like all roleplay based, or it's an NPC saying things like die now.
Yeah.
But that is not what I would understand as a damage call. In most LARPs that are combat oriented, you will have a set of prearranged things you can say that indicate your character is doing something to another character, whether that be, as in the famous YouTube video from 15, 20 years ago, shouting fireball at them and they're supposed to know what that means, or a more modern approach says you take this much damage if you're hit with a sword and they don't say anything, or they can tell you that it's one of these special things. And it's sort of very standardized. So if you were throwing magic, it would do the same, like double, triple, this is fire, whatever.
Well, it doesn't really need that, because if you actually set someone on fire, they know how much damage they've taken.
I mean, that is an interesting point you're making there. It's very immersive in that way. If we're going to kill you, we will simply push you down the real hill.
Like, if you have a look at the archery range, I'm 100% sure someone is going to get shot there. You don't need to tell people how shot they are if there's an actual arrow in their actual body.
You know what? That's a really strong point I hadn't considered. So I do think you can still say it's freeform, though, because you like they might less hard.
Oh my god, the episode of iZombie in, like, a late season where there's a bunch of zombies who have, like, a really hardcore full contact LARP because they can heal from any damage that isn't to the brain.
Oh, I know people who would be doing that. I wouldn't, because I'm a wuss when it comes to physical pain, but I know people who would be super into hardcore zombie LARP.
It's implied that zombies don't really feel pain. Like, they feel a bit of pain, like, but it's more of a, like, when Liv stabs herself in the heart at one point and kind of goes, ouch, like I would if I, like, accidentally put my hand on the kettle after it had boiled.
Yeah, okay, I'd reconsider I would consider playing the LARP where you're just going to actually throw me off the castle.
Maybe Evermore Park is a LARP theme park for zombies.
I cannot disprove it, but I think it unlikely.
I have brought with me the conspiracy theories from last week.
So it's light on its setting details, it's freeform on its rules, but it is railroaded on its story. The story here is either preset or fully in the hands of the NPCs. There is very little, as far as I can tell as a player. You can interact with NPCs, and maybe if you are a regular and they feel like it, you might get an actual dramatic scene where you get to influence their decisions in a more lasting way.
I will say some of those have been filmed and are on YouTube, and if you enjoy amateur dramatics, they are actually quite fun to watch.
But they are rare, and they're at the discretion of NPCs, and whether they continue to have happened next week is also at the discretion of the NPCs. Because the actual big story beats of this character is trying to destroy the town and this character is trying to save it, and which of them wins, doesn't seem to be something the player can affect at all. That is just preset plot.
Yeah.
Which is in keeping with it being a theme park that you come to watch, but it is also a game that people come to play, and it means that the game you play is in effect restricted to a kind of soap opera type roleplay. You can have as much interpersonal drama as you like because the story beats are on rails and you can't change them. So all you can do is have interpersonal drama with no greater impact. People have a lot of fun doing that, and I do not wish to suggest that that is not a valid kind of roleplay. We call it ball gowning. It's so much fun. I'd love to have awkward breakups in character while the plot happens without my attention. It's great
Yeah.
fun, but it's the only kind you can have at Evermore.
It's also not massively fun to watch as an outsider.
No, it's like coming in the middle of the gossip between people you don't know about someone else you don't know. It doesn't hold the attention.
It's like listening to the office gossip on like day one of a new job.
Yeah,
Like you have to try really hard, and you have no knowledge.
yeah. And if you ask for background, you're either going to get told it's none of your business, or you're going to get an hour-long explanation of how people you don't care about have previously had arguments, which is not that fun.
Yeah.
It probably serves the regulars quite well because you wouldn't keep going back if you weren't enjoying it. Like if you weren't into the soap opera vibe of roleplay, you would not become a regular at Evermore. So for those people, it's probably absolutely fine in terms of that's the kind of roleplay they're coming for. But as a casual visitor, it's not I have great memories of seeing a cool thing or impacting something or helping to move the story along. It's other people had gossip around me.
So, again, I say, I'm aware that they do not have a super young clientele, but can you imagine being like a 9-year-old in this
Yeah.
situation?
And you get to see one of those big dramatic scenes, but it's somebody screaming in costume at someone else in costume who's trying not to react too much about, like, whether she should marry her fiance.
Yeah. And you were brought here with the promise that there were warlocks.
Right. Or at least someone was going to teach you dragon fighting skills.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, if you're a 9-year-old and someone gives you a wooden sword and a cardboard cutout and says, okay, here are the places you should aim for on a dragon, now practice and show me.
Hmm.
That's a great half an hour. Great lesson. They don't do those at Evermore. We'll do them at our park, which we'll talk about in the bonus episode.
We will.
Okay. So bringing those two threads together of the physical park and the gameplay, Evermore as a project is not interested in prior art or in best practices.
Oh no.
It is not interested in how are other people doing this. Evermore hired someone off Disney, like someone quite senior in Disney's park design, but still has not really looked at how does Disney use its character actors, lay out its parks, keep its guests interested.
Because I think in some of the early stuff, Brett Schneider and his team cite Sleep No More. I think they also went on a little field trip to, I want to say Sleep No More. It might have been a similar project. And they do seem to have genuinely wanted to absorb what these projects do well by hiring people from them and visiting them. But they've just looked at the outermost shell and gone, oh, that's the sexy bit, that's the shiny bit.
Yeah, none of
Let's
how it makes
do
it
something with
work.
that. No one asked the Disney cast management team, could we have a look at some of your legal contracts, please? They would have said no.
Yeah.
But nobody asked.
That nobody asked. They didn't even go and talk to some Disney employees and say, when you're briefed on how your character works, what sort of things
Why
do
would
you
you
need
talk
to
to
know?
employees? Employees just exist.
Are part of the tools in the box, not actually a
Yeah.
person who can make decisions. Yeah. They advertise similarly. They advertise that they went to Europe. They say they went to 5 countries in Europe, which is more impressive if you don't realize how close the countries are in Europe, to collect antiques and art and get aesthetic ideas.
And actual human people's gravestones, which I'm
It's
genuinely
gross. That's
uncomfortable
gross.
with. It's really awful.
It's so easy to make a gravestone. There was no reason to do that.
I have prop gravestones in my house right now. You can have them. Email me.
Right, even if you want real rock,
Rock is not expensive.
There are people who carve gravestones for a living. You could get them to carve you some gravestones and then just attack them with a sandblaster for 5 minutes to give them aging.
From people's parishes. That's people's relatives.
Right. It's gross. Don't do that. But also, while they were here, we have a LARP scene. You may have heard of this. Europe also has a LARP scene. I don't know how many of the 5 countries in Europe that they went to were England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland.
Yeah.
Maybe it was those 4 and France. Yeah, I would not rule it out.
They don't know that we've got more than one country here. Are you joking?
That's probably true. One of the
Brett
countries they went to
Schneider
was
has never heard of Wales.
I'm going to say probably one of the countries they went to, as far as they're concerned, was London.
Yeah. Like, maybe they went briefly to a Scottish loch.
They seem to like castles, or they haven't really done anything with that. Like,
I think if you asked him where Cornwall was, he would think it was in Middle-earth.
I think you're right, and I hate that. Anyway, the point is, he was starting a LARP, and he did no research into LARP practices any more than he did into, is it good to have holes in the road? He's run well, Evermore is a bi-weekly club LARP, but they have learned nothing from the 40 years of experience we have in running bi-weekly club LARPs. They came to England. They didn't talk to Profound Decisions, who run what is generally regarded as like the prettiest and most like setting heavy. Like it's in terms of your costume, in terms of the amount of roleplay effort required to be a full participant, it is generally considered the large LARP with the highest standards. So it's the one that's prettiest to go and look at. It's also the one that it ran a game called Odyssey. It was the various Mediterranean ancient nations from antiquity having honor battles, but they built an arena, like a fully palisaded arena with stands and like gatehouse towers. It looks better than anything at Evermore, and they had gladiatorial fights in it. This is something that Evermore should want to do, but they didn't know anyone was doing it because they didn't look. They didn't look at how do you write your setting, how do you write briefings. They didn't bother having a setting, actually. They've just sort of got a vibe, and they don't seem to brief their characters. We have, and it's not, we were doing that, we, as in the UK, was doing this stuff with the sort of very attractive big fest LARPs. The Nordics, at the point where they were setting up Evermore, were deep into their LARP as moral revelation teaching tool thing, which is a fascinating thing that really wouldn't work very well for Evermore, but would have been an interesting thing to bring into shaping their thinking about what they did want to do. And the prestige LARPs.
I could be wrong about this, but my impression is that Brett Schneider belongs to a cadre of internet tech bro guys.
Yes. Who have never thought that anyone else might know anything before.
It's not just that, it's also specifically that of that sort of on the Stranger Things to Big Bang Theory spectrum of, oh yeah, nerd power, the nerds have inherited the earth, the boys who bullied me in school work for me now. And they'll understand now that I'm not one of those nerds. Like, I'm not one of the fireball guys.
I'm a cool
Come
nerd.
on. I'm one of the cool nerds who gets girls. It's like there's a whole spectrum of behavior, which is that there is like a specific sort of guy who deserves all of the sort of praise and plaudits for both in equal measure genuinely being good at coding and their job and having been like laughed at for liking Dungeons and Dragons in high school. And those two things are equally deserving of all of the praise and money and attention they get now. And now they get to bully everybody else.
Yeah.
And I don't mean this as he is an awful human being. I'm not making aspersions on his character. I do think that he is of a group that thinks, oh, LARPers, they're like the real nerds, the ones who should have been bullied at school. Not like me. Right. Bullying me was a mistake and you're going to regret it.
Which means I don't need to learn anything from the people who are successfully charging £300 to £500 a ticket for people to dress up in costume and spend a weekend in a real nuclear bunker or a castle or on a tall ship being pirates.
Mm.
And the prestige LARP scene in Europe literally does that. They will charge you £500 for the weekend, but you will get to go out on a real tall ship and be a pirate. Evermore cannot charge you multiple $100s for a weekend where you get to swan about in a real castle because they haven't got one and because they don't know how to set it up. But that's the field they want to be in. They want to be able to sell multiple $100 packages to have a weekend at Evermore.
The full experience. Usually, when I see this kind of thing, I think it's like the Ready Player One paradigm of geeky shit, where I'm like, this guy is coming into a thing that he vaguely remembers liking as a teenager and like thinking, well, these stupid girls and queer people won't have really thought about how to do this right. I can do it way better than them. That's genuinely not the vibe I get from interviews with Brett Schneider. And yet he seems to have done the exact same thing.
Yeah. And it's notable that among the information that you don't get from Evermore's website, or probably from going to Evermore, we've talked about physical safety. LARP also has safety practices, but Evermore does not. There is no diversity inclusion statement for Evermore. There is nothing saying, here are the topics you should not be bringing up in this game. There is nothing saying, it's fine to bully someone for choosing to be a pirate, but it's not fine to bully them for being fat because that's just a fact about the player.
And there's
Nothing of
like
that.
a lot of accounts from fans. Like, these are positive accounts from people who have talked about like extremely personal issues, and in some cases issues that would probably not be allowed by that kind of code of conduct, with actors in character at Evermore.
Who can't tell them, please don't tell me about this. Yeah.
And also who have to react to this, process it, attempt to do their best to like respond positively whilst also being in character as a wizard.
Right.
Which is a lot to ask of a troupe of actors who, while they seem like very good at acting in their jobs, probably do not have any training for this specifically.
Right. It is not fair to expect them to be doing therapy for people
Yeah.
as part of
Like,
their
they
job.
probably don't even have the little "I'm a mental health first aider" footer on their emails.
There's no way the actors at Evermore have corporate emails. They are not on the IT system. I do not believe this. Yeah, it's, there isn't anything like that. And I guarantee that at Evermore, if you appear female, your choices on what you can roleplay as are more limited than if you appear male. Because that's one of the things we learned through doing LARP, is that you have to put it very clearly in writing that your setting is gender neutral and that women can too be generals and pirates. And even when you put it in writing, you will still have a group of men turn to the one woman in the room and say, well, you'll organize the healing. Because even if you try to write it out, it comes in. And there's no way that Evermore even tried to write it out, which means that if you go along to Evermore looking female, your choices are probably witch or wench.
I have somewhere in my house a tarot deck comes with a guidebook, has a lot of like tarot decks that
Sure.
are pretty enough to attract beginners do, like mostly
Absolutely.
themed ones. And the guidebook has 4 different paragraphs in different chapters explaining that queens and knights are gender neutral. And
Right.
the exhaustion by the 4th paragraph is incredible. Like, the tone is very much like, guys, these are tarot cards. They're tarot cards. If you cannot get your head around gender not applying to tarot cards, I don't think you have the flexibility to like achieve the frame of mind you need to do tarot.
Right.
That's kind of the vibe I get from like the idea of trying to be a. I mean, there are female rangers and stuff, but I feel like if you showed up and wanted to be a female dwarf, you would have to bring this tarot guide with you.
Yeah, I think it just genuinely would not process.
I never saw any female dwarves in any of the videos I watched. Does that mean that the male dwarves were doing the Taylor Swift songs that they got sued over?
I assume so. That's
Which
pretty cool.
ones? I don't think I saw any of them playing Taylor Swift. I have to go and look this up
Maybe they took those
immediately.
ones down for legal reasons.
I have to go and see this immediately. I
The
want to
dwarfs.
know
To be
which
fair,
Taylor Swift songs.
I would be putting it on my CV. Dwarf that got sued by Taylor Swift.
CV, I would be like building a career off that. I would be on the like interview
Would you like to
circuit.
hire the dwarves who got sued by Taylor Swift? Yes,
That would
yes, I
be my
would.
band name. That sounds like one of the bands in soul music, and I would listen to it.
It would be great. Okay, so
Now I just want to know what gender bent dwarf Taylor Swift songs were being performed at Evermore. I'm not thinking about anything else for the rest of the day.
well, you think about that, and I'm going to talk about masculinity.
Hang on, I'm going to message a Swiftie. Give me a second to find my phone.
So, getting to the actual thesis of looking at all of this through a lens of what about this is gender, what about this is patriarchy.
Mm.
The way you get the right to not care about prior art is be male. Like the way you get to be Brett Schneider, that's not his name. That's someone else, isn't it? Is that the guy?
Brett Schneider, isn't it? Brett Schneider is his surname.
No, it's Ken Brett. It's Ken Brett Schneider. Yes. not Brett Schneider, which is why I was confused. Yeah, the way you get to be Ken Brett Schneider and have an aesthetic vision with none of the practical implementation,
Brett Schneider is
and
a
then
different dude. There is a Brett
yes,
Schneider dude.
that's why I was confused.
Yeah, hence the confusion. He is a producer and director.
Different guy.
He works on Jeopardy.
Throughout this, please read Brett Schneider as a surname. We've just been confusing you unnecessarily. Thank you very much.
In many ways, Brett Schneider also works in Jeopardy.
Thank you. Yeah, he gets to not care about prior art and just make it up as if from scratch. He gets to opt out of mutuality and learning things together. He gets to opt out of caring about, are people fed and safe, and can they go to the bathroom, and can they be evacuated, because those are feminine concerns, but also because he gets to be the kind of leader who doesn't have to care about that because he is masculine. Because he gets to believe that his imaginative vision is all he needs, and people let him believe that. The flaws in Evermore are basically all from the same thing, which is that Evermore is the act of one man's imagination, and everyone doing the work is acting as an extension of his vision. So they don't have the authority to make decisions that would have material impact, which is also a money thing. Like, should not discount that this is also a money thing. He has all the money, therefore he makes all the decisions. But class analysis and feminist thought are both ways of examining the material reality of things, the power dynamics of the world as it really is.
It is exactly the same, like, successful rich person brain rot that, like, affected J.K. Rowling when she wrote her awful detective novels. Like,
Yes.
it's not something women are immune to, but it is something that expresses itself in uniquely gendered ways.
Right, and it's something people let you get away with in gendered ways. Because she wrote really bad detective novels, then people were hard on her about it.
Yeah, and, like, don't
People
get
have
me
not really been
wrong,
hard on Evermore.
like, she still got to write The Cursed Child, which everything I've heard about it sounds more unhinged than the last.
I've
And
mercifully not heard much about it. I've avoided knowing things about her latest works.
I have a couple of friends, all of whom I have to say are, like, cis women who, like, love Harry Potter but feel guilty about it, that feel a need to keep me constantly updated on Harry Potter news.
Huh.
I don't know if they think this is, like, their penance for caring about Harry Potter, is that they're like, "I need to update the nearest trans person on what is happening with this."
That's a weird choice of penance, because it seems like
Um,
just making the nearest trans person care about both it and them caring about it.
and this has somehow turned into, I am now, like, the what's going on in Harry Potter correspondent for a different circle of friends who, like, ceased being interested in Harry Potter but occasionally hear, like, a weird Harry Potter related thing,
Want
will
to know the
now
gossip.
ask me, because they know I always know what's going on with Harry Potter,
Because against your will, you have been told.
because of these, like, two specific people who keep telling me.
Look, if you're one of Dia's friends, stop. They don't need to know.
Just stop telling me about Harry Potter, please. I haven't interacted with Harry Potter since Pottermore launched. Like, I haven't seen any of the other films or the plays. I know all of the plot of all of them because of these people.
Sadness. They have
But, like, my
NPCs
point is,
who have been turned loose with insufficient briefing.
like, I do think it is exactly the same, like, rich person passion project, like, no one has said no to me since
Yeah.
1997
Yeah.
disease,
I am too rich for an editor.
that, like, makes you go, well, I will have the ideas, and the world will simply orchestrate itself
Right. All I
to
need to
make
do is
my ideas work.
if I put the vision out into the world, it will be whole and complete and exactly as I envision it. And all these other people who have to make the actual thing happen will make it happen the way it is in my head.
And, like, that is a thing that, as a rich person, you can simply hire people to do. Take the
Right.
thought that is in my head and make it a reality.
But it's also one of the things you can do when you are positioned as the man in an interaction, because you are not stuck in the drawing room having soap opera gossip. You are able and allowed to make material impacts on the world. You have, you know, looked at as a character, so looking at this as a work of fiction, you have agency in the story. You're the one that makes the wheels turn.
And in a really specific way. you are allowed to consider the way that the world actually works in reality and not in your head to be kind of, I don't know if the phrase I'm looking for is women's work, but like
No,
to
I think it
say,
is. Yes. Things like, how are we going to feed all these people? Well, that's not my problem. That's the small stuff. You sweat it.
and specifically, like, how do we make a park that will not kill children? Well, that's a problem for
That
women.
seems
They're
like
the
it's a
ones with
caring
children.
responsibility. Yeah. Is it safe to chase everyone out of the park in the dead of night? Well, it's cool. My job is to think about what's cool. If you want to make it safe, do that where it doesn't affect my coolness. So I don't think Evermore is as it is. Yeah, I don't think you can treat Evermore as it is in reality as an allegory for gender, but I think it is painted in the same colors.
Yeah, I think on sort of in the grand scale of rich person uncontrollability disease, you've got, like I said, you've got the J.K. Rowlings whose evil impacts upon the world are actually quite strictly divided between bad writing and causing the actual like abuse of real human people. They're very
Yeah.
divided. Like your art will still be
Yes.
policed in the normal manner.
Right. Harry Potter books
However,
themselves have never broken anyone's legs.
yeah, um, this is more the like, was it Ford? Who was it released that car that had like a giant spike in the steering wheel because they thought it looked cool? So if you were in a collision, you just got impaled.
I don't remember it. It could have,
Have
but
you not seen this one? Oh my god, you have to look it up. It's so
I
worth it
do
because
have
when
to
you
look
look
that
at it,
up.
you look at it
Sounds
with your human eyes and you just go, you know
someone
how
made
sometimes
that,
cars stop fast
right?
and seatbelts don't exist yet because it's like the 50s?
This is an extremely Elon Musk school of design.
You just
We're
look
going
at
to
the
have the
human
Hyperloop
eyes
go
and go,
600 miles an hour. What's the stopping range going to be? Doesn't matter.
yeah.
Is it going to be plowed into by the six things behind it? Don't worry about it. It just won't break.
It reminds me of how like I don't when I was a kid, my dad once told me a story about how his family were once driving down the motorway, and my dad's a twin, so he and his brother are in the back
Yeah.
seat, like having an argument about whatever. And his dad, who's driving, like reached back and sort of, you know the way that dads like sort of mime hitting you when they don't want to say shut up because they're focusing on the road?
I'm
Like they're
aware.
not actually enacting violence, they just sort of flap their hand about in a slapping motion as if to communicate, really,
Right.
this is important. I will do something, but I can't think of anything I will do because I'm trying not to crash the car.
Yeah.
His dad like reaches around, flaps his hand about like that. And his brother, for some reason, thought the best way to react to this was to, on the motorway at like 70 miles an hour, open his door and jump out of it because there were no seatbelts and no locks in the back doors because it was the 70s.
Mm.
That's the kind of thing that I'm thinking of. Like, it's not actually the cursed child, it's the stabbing car, the child eating car version of like rich person invention, where a dude will just go, do you know what would be really cool and awesome? A stabby
Right.
car. A car that stabs you when you crash.
And then the stabby car gets made.
Someone makes the stabby car. And then we all dunk on the Ford Pinto. Like, at least that had to have like a pretty serious accident to explode you. The stabby car, you just had to like
You just had
brake
to
for a
see a
deer.
bus.
Nobody rags on the stabbing car the way that they ragged on the Ford Pinto for like 20 years. The Ford Pinto like the stars had to align. I'm not saying it wasn't awful that people like died in horrible fires, but like there had to be like a collision at the right angle, there had to be a source of fire, people had to be sitting in the
Right.
back. The stabbing car literally just like the driver had to be
Was
driving.
there waiting to stab you. You just had to come unexpectedly on a level crossing, and that was it for you.
Yeah, like, and you bought that car. You looked at the
You
stabby
bought the
car.
stabbing
You
car.
bought it. Like, at
You
least
went to
again,
Evermore, and you went, "Oh, that's super going to catch fire," and then you went again next week.
yeah, because people will just take this stuff if somebody who like seems like the kind of guy we tell ourselves a narrative about, and that narrative is The Social Network, the movie.
Yeah,
Like
it
if
is.
they have the charisma and confidence to be like, oh no, I'll make it work. We go, yeah, he'll make it work. Don't be so worried.
I
Get in the stabby car.
I made my money selling an internet utility, and therefore you can trust me with your 5-year-old.
Listen, man,
I
I
will not
made
drop him down a hole. I will not hit him with a train. You can trust me with your children.
And I do think it's not that we don't have this, it's that it's the American flavor of it is like captain of the industry that we currently consider the American industry can do no wrong. And that is how you get stabby cars, and that is how you get children immolated by warlocks.
but is also leading me to the magnificent vision of, because one of the things I wanted to say is that Evermore is a folly. Like, it
Oh yeah.
exists without function because it's there for the aesthetics, but then that has led me back round to, what if Isambard Kingdom Brunel made a theme park?
Oh my god, I would love to go to Isambard Kingdom Brunel's theme park.
I want the Victorian Captains of Industry theme park.
I used to greet Isambard Kingdom Brunel at least like 2 or 3 times a week because I used to get the train out of London when I was very small several times a week, and
Yeah.
I think my dad must have started it. I don't think I started doing this on my own. But there are 2 statues in Paddington Station, one of Paddington Bear and one of Isambard Kingdom Brunel.
That famous double act.
And I would always go and hang out by Paddington Bear, like with a book bought from WH Smith's, and like if I was lucky at McDonald's when we had long waits for our train.
You would also.
And I distinctly remember on the way to and from Paddington Bear, I would pass Isambard Kingdom Brunel, and my dad would always ask me like his name and like what he did, and I would only like get like
You only get Paddington time.
I would get my Paddington time and my time like reading all the Jacqueline Wilsons and WH Smiths and eating chicken nuggets if I correctly identified Isambard Kingdom Brunel and a few of his great accomplishments. So, like, to me, when you say Isambard Kingdom Brunel theme park, I'm picturing just like a sort of interactive thing where like you enter and there's a statue and you have to go, Isambard Kingdom Brunel, railway bridge, and you get let in into this wondrous world of Jacqueline Wilson novels and teddy bears and chicken nuggets.
There's an entrance exam for this theme park.
It's just a theme park with an entrance exam, but it's the same question every single time. So, like, you don't have to worry about it. It's just a weird little ritual you have to do.
You have to recite the
in.
achievements before you can come in.
You have to go, that's Isambard Kingdom Brunel. You know, suspension bridge. I don't know why that's the only one coming into my brain right now. He did lots of other things. He did a lot of railways mostly. That's why he's in a train station. Mostly.
Yeah. You are only allowed to come to our theme park if you know about the Clifton suspension bridge.
Yeah, and then like once you're in, you are then allowed to just like
hang out with Paddington, eat chicken nuggets, explore the life-size foster home from the Jacqueline Wilson novels.
But only if you can like tell me about the like East London line.
Perfect. No notes. This is ideal.
I wanted to go there so much now. Imagine if that was how like school educational trips operated. You answer like one not even difficult question about what you've been learning, and then you just get to eat chicken nuggets for the rest of the day.
It would be motivating.
It would be great. It would be better than that school trip in year like 3 where my teacher took me to her dad's house for dinner. A real thing that happened to me in year 3.
I don't think I have any memories of school trips in year 3.
I remember that one quite distinctly.
I probably would remember that one, to be fair.
We just went to her dad's house, my entire class.
It's both more weird that it was your entire class.
No, yeah, my
it's
entire
less weird,
class
but also why?
got on a coach with our little like paper packed lunches, sat on the coach like trading sandwiches and crisps. And we went to, I think she was from St. Albans, and we went to the village church, and we like looked at the village church, and then she said, okay, time to go to my dad's house, and we all went to her dad's house.
I guess. Sure.
That's one way to get expenses paid for your trip home.
Right, it's one way to go and visit your dad, who's been nagging you to do that.
Just take your entire year 3 class with you.
If it's a way to not get invited to dinner again, it probably worked really well.
Yeah, I mean, can you...
You would not ask for them to come again.
Do you know, it didn't really occur to me until I said it out loud how completely bananas that was from his perspective. Like, I've thought since, like, that was a weird school trip. It's never really occurred to me that that's a weird thing for your child to do to you.
It's a weird thing for your child to do, is to turn up at your house with 37-year-olds.
Like, I've thought, obviously since then, I've thought, actually, that was really weird. Why did we go to her dad's house? It has never before occurred to me. Oh, that was really weird. Why did she bring 37-year-olds to her dad's house?
That's weird, right?
That is weird. I've never done that to my dad.
That's probably for the best.
I think the highest number of 7-year-olds I've ever taken to my dad's house is 1. And she's his niece.
Right, which is not weird. 37-year-olds is weird to take to, frankly, anyone's house. Like, there is no one where it is normal to turn up just at their house that they live in with 37-year-olds. Anyway, we're off topic.
We are so off
You
topic.
should not take 37-year-olds to Evermore because at least one of them will fall in a hole.
Or get elated.
or get immolated by unsupervised or badly managed pyrotechnics, or shot with an arrow.
Or electrocuted.
And also, they'll all be bored in an hour because it's not a very big park.
And you'll have to bring packed lunches because the food is just hot dogs
You
and
will have to
coffee.
bring packed lunches because you can't let them all just have coffee and donuts for dinner. They're
Do they
7.
even have kosher options?
I strongly doubt it. And not just because general Evermore vibes, also because it is in Utah. And general Utah vibes.
This is true. Why do they have coffee? Isn't Utah Mormon? They're not allowed coffee.
Well, they seem to be selling a lot of hot chocolate from that kiosk.
That's fair. God, imagine spending an entire day at Evermore and you're not allowed any coffee.
I'm not doing any form of immersive LARP if I can't have caffeine. It's not happening. I am no longer 20 years old, and I require caffeine in order to be a wizard.
So we don't currently have much, but could I suggest a t-shirt line for I require caffeine in order to be a wizard? Someone on
I'm
like
up for it.
ePublic or something, get on that.
Yeah. We
promise not to sue you. We really want to see it.
Oh no, anyone making like their own merch for this, just send us a link so we can see it. You're good.
We'll share it everywhere because we will be deeply charmed.
We will. So that is my conclusion on Evermore, is that I don't think Evermore is an allegory for the patriarchy, but I think Evermore only happens with patriarchy.
I think that's an extremely valid stance.
This has been feminist analysis of the Evermore theme park treated as a media property in itself.
I will say my analysis of Evermore
Mhm.
theme park is I desperately want to show up there and ask them about their like gender neutral options for every single thing in the park and just see if a single person can answer.
I'm not saying that would necessarily be a fun, light-hearted day, but I think it would be a very interesting and entertaining day in a spiteful way.
I just think you would learn
Like,
a
you'd
lot.
get so mad by the end of the day, but you would have an engaging time getting mad about it.
It's like if you've ever been to like an art gallery dedicated to a school of art that you're not super into, and like I think it is valuable to do that because you can learn about like, oh, there are parts of this that appeal to me, but also because sometimes it is just fun to give in to the part of your soul that wants to be a bit little hater.
Right, and say it's rubbish, it's not even got petals on it. Just
Exactly.
blobs.
Blobs. Just don't say I could paint that.
Oh, I couldn't paint it, but I don't like it either. I think that's a valid aesthetic stance.
Yeah, it's like me with like specific brutalist buildings. I think the people who are deeply anti-brutalism for no reason at all are like the most boring people alive.
Mhm.
I do think that Churchill College in Cambridge should have been razed to the ground.
That's fair. It probably has better exit routes than Evermore. Although Brutalist Evermore is a vision I've just had, and it's brilliant.
I once slipped on one of the giant concrete blocks that they have instead of passageways at Churchill, because it was really rainy and I couldn't see where I was going, and I just thought, oh, this is how I die. Great. Death by brutalist concrete block, exactly how I was supposed to go.
This tracks, I thought, as I fell and smashed my head on the microphone.
It's like, there was nothing I could do to save myself at that point. It was just hope I didn't smash my head on the concrete. I didn't,
And then
but if I had, my final thought would have been, yeah, this tracks.
And then a punt came past with an unsupervised smoke machine. Okay.
Okay.
That about wraps up this analysis. We will do a bonus episode where we give us investment money and we will do this better.
Absolutely we will. But first, we need to roll some dice.
Well, we need to decide whether this is going back in the hat
Oh,
or whether we're putting in a different wild card, because this was in the really wild card section.
Going back in the hat.
So my feeling on this is it's hard to do. Is regrettably, because we are not in Utah and cannot go and get more primary source information.
Yeah.
I think we are in danger of retreading the same ground if we reanalyze Evermore.
That's fair. I do agree with you.
And I have a very funny proposal for a new wildcard if you'd like to hear it.
Yes, I would.
Can we put the Neuralink in?
Oh my god, yes. Oh no, this was actually terrible but compelling. But that is also terrible but
That is still the Neuralink.
I do actually
Oh,
want to
Grant.
put some more interesting. I've got on my list of things to add to the hat. I've got quite a few that are like quite wild cardy. So
Yeah, I mean, my proposal is that when we do our break between seasons, as well as resetting our analysis hats, we also revisit our property lists and
I mean, the
put
current
newer
hot
things in if we feel
topics
like it.
section
Right,
has
exactly. That
gotten
one at least we should revisit because they're now at least 6 months old.
yeah.
But I would love to consider the Neuralink as a work of fiction because I really think it is.
It really is. Okay.
Okay, and then we need to roll some dice. And it's your turn to roll, I
Yes.
think.
So we are down to a hat of 8.
Ooh-hoo-hoo.
I need to roll 1
Every
d8.
time the stupid chemical one gets closer.
I'm not doing it. Sorry, I've accidentally brought up like a proper D&D dice roller instead of my usual number generator. I wasn't thinking there. Okay, a number from 1 to 8. Ooh, needless nitpicking! This is
We're
gonna
gonna
be
have so much
fun!
fun!
Oh, I'm very excited. And a random number from 1 to 101. Generate. 10. Oh, we're up in the classics.
We are.
Pride and Prejudice.
Oh. We're gonna be so cancelled.
This is gonna be great.
I can hear the angry fan mail arriving by letter.
Oh, I mean,
It's gonna be good.
anything in the classics section was gonna be great, let's be honest.
I mean, that's right. That's entirely true. We would not be more cancelled if we were needlessly nitpicking Shakespeare.
As soon as I got a low number, I was like, this is gonna be a good time.
This is going to be good.
Okay.
Excellent.
Well, reader, feel free to join us next week, or maybe don't if you don't want to hear me needlessly nitpick Pride and Prejudice for at least an hour.
Fortunately for me, I do want to hear that, and I look forward to, to joining
Oh, well,
you next
you don't
week
have a
for
choice.
it. That's true. I do have to be here,
You
but
have
also
to
I'm
be
looking
here.
forward to it. It's going to be so much fun.
Okay. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you, dear listener, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Analysis Roulette, a podcast applying a randomly selected mode of analysis to a randomly selected creative work, just to see what happens. Your hosts have been Dia and Duck. You can find us on Spotify or on YouTube, and if you'd like to get in touch, you can send us an email at analysisroulette@gmail.com. And remember, if you like our show, share it with your friends, and if you don't like our show, share it with your enemies. Thanks.